So, what are the chances that getting out of Mexico was going to be the difficult part? If you've caught on to the theme of this channel, you probably already know that for me, that is not hard to believe. Hi, I'm Dominique, and welcome to What Are the Chances? So, in my experience, most of the time when people are going to another country, especially when they're driving, they worry about getting in, right? I mean, they're going to worry about whether or not they got the right paperwork with them. Did they remember all their documents? Did they get the right car insurance? They may worry about whether getting through customs is going to be difficult. Did they bring something they shouldn't have brought? And more recently, they might even be worried about whether or not their dogs are going to pass inspection. Those are the things that I was worried about. Now, when I say getting out of Mexico was the difficult part, getting in to Mexico was no picnic for me either. And if you want to see more about that experience, there is a video I already put out on that will hopefully help you to avoid playing a game that I call border pong. But today we're going to talk about my experience in trying to get out of Mexico with no car, 2 dogs, and more junk than most cars can hold. If you want to know more about how I got into this mess, there is also another previous video that talks about how car life ended the day it began. Because I had made a decision to start car life. And the very first day of my adventure towards Alaska from Mexico, I crashed my car into a mountain about 4 hours outside of the border. Now, thankfully, we all walked away without a scratch. Well, a couple scratches, but that's another story. After spending hours, 10 hours, trying to get this taken care of at the scene of the accident, I finally arrived at the hotel at 4:30 in the morning. Thank goodness the claims adjuster with my Mexico insurance loaded me, my 2 dogs, and everything I could fit into his car and found us a hotel that would take dogs. So, of course, we arrive and the system is down. And they cannot run my credit card. So we have to leave and go get cash out of an ATM and leave my driver's license with the front desk. After the adjuster left, I ended up talking to one of the gentlemen that had helped me bring in my stuff from the car. And we talked about his experience in New York, and we talked about my accident, and we talked about Morelia, where I had been staying. I was pretty wound up and I wasn't ready for sleep, and he was working the night shift. Really nice gentleman. I stayed there for 2 days and then moved to an Airbnb. Now, thank goodness, this accident happened right outside of Saltillo, which is where I stayed when I first came into Mexico, and I was able to get an Airbnb at the same building with the same host. He was wonderful and very flexible. I had no idea how long it was going to take me to get everything taken care of with the insurance. I booked for a week, told him I might be a month. He said it was no problem. Just let him know what was going on. And I had to go back and forth with that answer several times. The reason being, when the insurance company contacted me, they let me know after a couple days that everything that I needed to do here was being taken care of online, that I was free to leave the country. So I started trying to leave the country, right? I tried to contact Uber, but they didn't have cars either big enough to handle my dogs and I and all the stuff, or they didn't want to drive all the way to the border. I tried taxis. They were willing to drive that far, but again, they didn't have vehicles large enough, and they couldn't cross the border. I tried to rent a car. Now, I had been turned down by most of the major rental companies because they didn't offer one-way service. All the cars needed to be returned back to Mexico. And I had decided to cancel my trip to Alaska and head to see my sister in Detroit instead. Well, I finally get hold of one company, and it's a major company, and they definitely have locations on both sides of the border. And this young lady, after several hours of translating through WhatsApp, books a large SUV for me. Except she can't show me it's a large SUV. She originally booked a smaller one. And she said it's notated in the system. Her manager has signed off on it. It is a larger one. And that she has confirmed my drop-off location and everything is fine. I said okay. And she told me I didn't need to pay until I picked up the car. So I didn't trust my luck. No surprise, right? I was really concerned that I was going to show up the night before I'm supposed to leave to pick up my SUV and they would have something small waiting for me, like was showing online. The office was only a couple miles away, so the next morning I got up and I walked over there. I introduced myself, gave them my information. The woman confirmed that yes, there was a notation in the system from her manager saying that I would be getting the larger SUV. I couldn't believe it. I was thrilled. I mean, that's just not the kind of luck I have. And then she said, so when will you be returning it? And I said, oh no, this is a one-way trip. I'm heading to the Detroit area. And she was like, we don't offer that. And I assured her that her coworker had confirmed the location I would be dropping it off at, how long I expected to be there, the mileage, etc. And she apologized for her coworker's mistake and said that was not a service that they offered. All cars needed to be returned to Mexico. Canceled that, right? I mean, what am I going to do? I'm not going to drive across the border and then have to drive back and then have to try to figure out how to get back across again. I mean, that was pointless. So I canceled. I didn't know what else to do, and I reached out to the gentleman that I met at the hotel as well as my host and asked them if they knew anybody who had a vehicle large enough that could get me across the border. My host didn't. He said he would look around, but he didn't know anybody with a large enough vehicle. The man at the hotel sends me a picture of a Jeep Grand Cherokee and says, I think I have one. I couldn't believe it. He was offering to make this 4.5-hour drive with me. I told him I was more than happy to pay him for his time there and back, etc. All the expenses. I just needed to get out. And he said he couldn't take me across the border, but he could definitely get me to the border. I remembered what my mom had said when we were young about border taxis. And so I contacted one in Laredo, and they put me in touch with a driver who could get me across the border and agreed to meet me in Nuevo Laredo. So that was the plan. The gentleman from the hotel, who is now a friend of mine, shows up. We load up the car, and I get a message from the insurance company saying that everything is taken care of and I need to get my car and tow it back across the border. Now, we had just stopped at the tow yard to pick up my license plate so I could return it to Georgia, and it was gone already. They had moved my car. I wrote her back. I said, that's not happening. You told me I could leave this country. I'm not coming back to this country to tow a vehicle and it's going to cost me more than you're paying me. It's going to cost me more than the $3,000 you're giving me for my car to do that. So we headed towards the border. We get to the parking lot, and my friend gets out and goes and talks to other taxis around to find out what this guy should be charging me. And when he shows up, he tells me it's going to be $120 to get across the border. We were both shocked. But then he explains, well, you know, you've got all this stuff, you've got 2 dogs, you're probably going to be inspected. It's going to take hours to get through the border. And again, I experienced this in the previous border pong video. You can find out more about that. So I conceded. I was like, okay, no problem. I mean, we were talking a very short distance. We were just going to Laredo. And it was kind of funny because we're trying to load all this stuff into his car and he's just standing there playing on his phone. And my friend looks at him and he looks over at me and he goes, you should sit down. You've been through enough. We've got this. And he gives this guy what my kids would call the look. And they'll tell you that when mom gives you the look, you do whatever it is she's telling you to do. And this man acted just like that. His phone went in his pocket. He started grabbing some stuff and putting it into the car. Now, he didn't grab a lot, but he moved. And of course, I didn't go sit down. I continued to help. This was my belongings. This was my fault. I wasn't going to leave it to somebody else to do, but I really appreciated what the gentleman did for me. Anyway, we leave the parking lot and we're on the way there, and the guy says, well, you know, this would have been cheaper if you were coming the other direction. He goes, you always charge more when you're going back to the US. He's like, it would have cost you like $80 if you had been coming to Mexico from Laredo. I was like, oh, okay. We drive right up to the booth. No waiting. The guy looks at my passport, asks a couple basic questions, hands it back, we're on our way. Literally parking lot to motel door, 30 minutes tops. And I kind of jokingly asked him if he was going to give me a discount since it didn't take the hours that we thought it was going to take. He laughed and just smiled, you know, like, and I said, well, I guess not. Okay, so I go in and I grab a bellhop cart and he drives around to the back of the hotel and we load up the bellhop cart and I start wheeling it down the hall, and it's being wonky. It's got a crazy wheel on it and I'm having a little bit of a difficult time, and he's still out at the car. And these 3 young men come and grab the cart from me. And they're like, where's your room? And I was like, oh, you don't need to do that. And they're like, it's okay, where's your room? And they're looking at all this stuff, and being me, over explaining everything, I was like, you know, I said I got into a car accident last week. I said I was moving back here to the US, and that's why I've got all this stuff. And they're like, I'm so sorry. So they push my cart into the room for me and leave. And I unload it. And I'm heading back out, and they're coming back in with another cart full of stuff. And I think I literally gasped because they started laughing. And I was like, you guys don't need to do this. I really appreciate it. And they're like, it is no problem. One of the boys stayed with me and helped me get the cart back to the room and in, and he let me know that there was a separation that was happening and to be really careful. And then he took off. And the other 2 had gone back out and reloaded back the cart and came back. And I was so grateful. And they asked me where we were coming from, you know. And I said, oh, he's not my husband. I said, he's just the cab driver. And one of the boys laughed and said, "Ah, no wonder he's helping out so much." And I'm like, yeah, he's been that helpful this whole time. And we just kind of laughed about it, but they wouldn't accept anything. They were like, "You've had a difficult time. We just wanted to help you. It's no problem at all." And they left. They wouldn't take anything for it except a thank you. So, taxi driver, I go back out, double check the car, and now he follows me back in. And I'm getting the money out of my purse, and I hand it to him, and I'm going to be honest, I didn't tip him as large as I would have tipped him. He told me that it would have been cheaper if I had gone the other direction. He helped out almost nothing. And I know it wasn't his job to help out, but most cab drivers do help you out with your luggage, especially when I was just me trying to handle 2 dogs and this ridiculous amount of stuff. But that night, I started thinking about my new friend that had driven me to the border. And I started thinking about those 3 young men that just jumped in and started helping. And I started thinking about the fact that I had given up on my goal of making it to Alaska. And I didn't know if that was the right decision anymore. So the next morning I woke up and I started looking for vehicles. Now, before I had left Morelia, my sister and I had been talking about getting vans and how cool it would be to drive around the country in vans. And so I had looked at several of them. Here was one that shows up on Facebook Marketplace that was the style that I wanted. I wanted a larger, longer van, one that I could stand up in or nearly stand up in. And here was Beacon. And yes, her name is Beacon. Because when things got dark, she just showed up like this big white light and helped me see that I could still do this. I could still make it to Alaska. I wasn't sure at this point yet, but I reached out to the owner and he said, yeah. He said she's still available, and I bought her. And I knew when I saw her, we were going to Alaska. I just knew it. I'm never going to forget that man from the hotel. His wife thought he was nuts driving me to Nuevo Laredo. The last time he had been there, he came back when it was dark, and he got pulled over like 5 times by the police, each one of them wanting to check his paperwork. His wife couldn't believe he was willing to go through that again, and he was like, she needs the help, and I have the right size car. And those 3 young men that just jumped in without being asked, it just felt like I was supposed to meet them. And the fact that they jumped in and helped with and didn't accept a single thing and just wanted to be helpful. They had a sense of humor and they were kind. Like, they were, what is it my son would say? Like legend. They were awesome. And I'm not going to forget them. And if they ever end up watching this video, I hope they know how much they were appreciated. They made a rough night better. So what are the chances that getting out of Mexico could be more difficult than getting in? Pretty good. Now, if you want to watch more about how I got Beacon, where I got her, and how I managed to change my residency, get a new driver's license, get her registered, get her tagged, all in one day. That's going to be in another video coming up. I hope you show up. Take care. Maybe check out one of these videos.
If you find yourself in a similar situation, just slow down and breathe. Remember, you might have to ask for help from strangers, but they might be more than willing to jump in and give it to you, and you may make some new friends along the way.